Sephardic-Turkish Eggplant and Cheese Borrecas. Yum, yum, yum. Talk about a delicious eggplant and cheese and pie. Sally, that girl, in the kitchen. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sally, that girl, in the kitchen. In today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to make Sephardic-Turkish eggplant and cheese borrecas. Yes, borrecas filled with eggplant and cheese. So if you've never had a true Sephardic-Turkish borreca, you're in for quite a treat. The classic style is usually filled with a combination of cheese and potato, but in today's version, I'm going to make it with eggplant and cheese instead. And they are so yummy. So the filling that I'm going to prepare is very reminiscent of what we would call an Almodrote, which is an eggplant and cheese casserole. But today, instead of baking my casserole, I'm going to use that as my filling for my delicious borrecas. And as a plus, I'm going to leave some left over so that I can bake it up as an Almodrote. But you can instead, of course, just double up on your dough recipe and make more borrecas if you want to, whatever you choose. Regardless, they are going to be super delicious. So I am super excited to teach you how to make these. So let's not wait another second and let's get started. For the filling part of today's recipe, you will need 2 large eggplants, 12 ounces of shredded mozzarella cheese, 6 ounces of grated Parmesan cheese, a half a teaspoon of salt plus some more for sprinkling, ground pepper to taste, extra virgin olive oil for drizzling, 3 large eggs, and some non-stick cooking spray. For the dough part of today's recipe, you will need 2½ cups of all-purpose flour, a half a cup of vegetable oil, a half a cup of warm water, a half a teaspoon of salt, 1 egg for an egg wash, and a couple of ounces of grated Parmesan cheese for sprinkling on top. This amount of dough will make 18 eggplant and cheese borrecas. So if you'd like, you can double this recipe to make 36, or you can bake off your leftover filling, as I'm going to show you later on in this video. You will also need a large cookie sheet, a large baking tray with sides, a cutting board and a knife, a couple of long thin knives, a couple of teaspoons, about 4 forks, and then a large fork, such as a serving fork, and a larger spoon, such as a serving spoon. You'll also need a couple of small bowls, a pastry brush, 2 large bowls, a cooling rack, some dry measuring cups, 2 wet measuring cups, some measuring spoons, a handheld roller or a rolling pin, some parchment paper, some aluminum foil, and you can either use a dough cover or some plastic wrap, and you'll also need some oven mitts. So now that we have all of our ingredients and tools together, let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Then you're going to grab your cutting board and your knife and your 2 eggplants, and then you're just going to slice each of those eggplants right down the middle lengthwise. So you just want to expose the flesh of each of the eggplants. So just give them each a nice slice and then separate each into 2 pieces. So now you take each of these pieces, and using one of your long thin knives, what we're going to do is just cut a crisscross pattern right into the flesh of our eggplant. So we are going to be partially baking these in the oven. We just kind of want to roast them face down to develop some flavor and some color, but by scoring them this way, then when we season them, we allow some of that seasoning to seep into the flesh of our eggplant. So just make sure not to skip this step, and you're going to want to do it to all 4 pieces of your eggplant. You see how I use the knife and I just cut in one direction first, and then I turn the piece of eggplant, and then I'm just cutting in the opposite direction, just scoring the eggplant, making sure not to go all the way through to the peel. This is also going to really help when scooping out the flesh from our eggplant. So now that we've cut all four, what you're going to do is grab some extra virgin olive oil and you're just going to drizzle it right on top of that eggplant. And then I just use my fingertips and I just kind of spread it out all over the surface of the eggplant. And then I just repeat that same process for all four pieces. Now, there is no measurement here. You just drizzle and then spread. And you'll notice that the eggplant immediately absorbs that extra virgin olive oil, but that's totally fine. It's going to flavor our delicious filling, and we're just going to help rub it in and make sure that all of that eggplant gets some of the love we are providing with this delicious extra virgin olive oil. So now, once we've drizzled all four pieces and we've rubbed that oil in, then we're going to move on to seasoning our eggplant. So all I'm going to do is grab a little bit of salt, and just a little pinch will do for each piece. Just grab a little pinch and then just sprinkle on top, and make sure to season all four pieces. And then I like to grab my pepper grinder, and then I season all four pieces with a little bit of fresh ground black pepper. I'm using a multicolor peppercorn, but you can use black or whichever you prefer. Now I'm going to set those aside for a second, and I've prepared a pan with sides that I have covered in aluminum foil, and I'm going to give it a nice coating of non-stick spray, because I'm going to take these pieces of eggplant and I'm going to place them face down right onto this prepared pan, and I'm going to stick them this way in the oven so that I can begin cooking the eggplant and really allowing it to release its flavor. So once they're face down, then I just grab a fork and I very carefully puncture the eggplant a few times, and this just helps to release some steam as the eggplant bakes. So I pop it in my oven, and then I set a 30-minute timer to allow it to begin cooking. And after 30 minutes, I'm going to pull it out, and then we will be using the oven again at 350 degrees, but I suggest turning it off because it's going to take a little time to form our borrecas, so we can always turn it on again just a little bit later. So now our eggplants are out of the oven, and I carefully use a serving spoon to help myself turn the eggplant over so that I can have flesh side up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over a large bowl, and I'm going to scoop this flesh into a bowl. Of course, be sure that the eggplant is not super hot and that you're able to handle it. I like to just grab it from the top very carefully, and then I use my spoon and I just scoop out all of that yummy seasoned flesh, and I just remove the peel, and all I want left is that beautiful eggplant flesh. So then, of course, once I do it to one piece, then you're just going to repeat that process, and you're going to remove the flesh from all four pieces and add them to this bowl. So now, once all of the flesh is in, you're going to grab a fork and a knife, and right there in the bowl, just chop this up. What you're looking to do is to break up all of this eggplant. You don't want any large chunks. You just want to break it down really well by just cutting it up with your fork and knife. Then you're going to measure out your salt, and you're going to add it right on. And then you're going to grab your shredded mozzarella cheese. You're going to add that right in. And then you're going to add your grated Parmesan. For this recipe, I like to use grated Parmesan cheese as opposed to shredded. And then I'm just going to use one of my large serving spoons. Of course, you can use a wooden spoon or whatever you prefer. And I'm just going to combine all of these ingredients. I want to make sure that I incorporate the cheese well into that eggplant mixture. Then you're just going to want to grab one of your small bowls and a fork, and then you're going to want to crack 3 eggs into that bowl, and then just use your fork to beat those eggs really well. Now, once you've beaten the eggs really well, then all you're going to do is bring over that larger bowl with your eggplant and cheese mixture. You're going to add your egg right into it, and then you're just going to use the same spoon and combine. You just really want to make sure to incorporate that egg really well. You want it well distributed amongst your cheese and eggplant mixture. So once you've used your spoon to mix it in real well, and it's been well incorporated, then all that's left to do is to set this aside for a moment. And now we're going to build our dough. So I've measured my flour into a bowl, and on it I've added some salt, and I'm using my trusty large serving fork, which if you've seen me make any type of borrecas before, you know that I love using this fork to make my borreca dough, but you can use a whisk or a dough whisk. And then I'm going to measure out my vegetable oil, and I'm going to add it right on top of that flour and salt mixture. And I'm going to use my same trusty fork, and I just kind of work in a circular motion and just make sure to combine that oil with the flour. So as I've said in some of my other recipes that use this dough, what you're looking to make is sort of a pebbly type of mixture. So I use the back of the fork to scrape off any dry flour from the sides of my bowl, and then I use the side of the fork to break down any large clumps. We do want smaller clumps because that's what we're looking to form. We want to make some small, pebbly, beige colored pebbles. Pebbly pebbles. But you understand what I'm trying to say. I basically just want to make sure that that flour touches all of the oil, and by the time I'm done combining, my mixture is a beige color and it has some small pebbles running throughout. Then I'm going to measure out my water. I'm going to heat it up in the microwave. I want it warm to the touch, not super hot, but definitely warm. And then I'm going to pour it right on top. Now, I will mention, before you add your water, if you're not getting that appearance of beige little pebbles and it's not clumping up, you can always add a touch more oil if you need to, just a touch, maybe a teaspoon or so. And then you add your warm water, mix it in as I just did with the fork, and then clean off that fork and then switch to your hand. And you're going to see how quickly this dough forms. Literally just grabbing the dough ball itself to clean off the sides of the bowl. It just sticks together almost like magic. This is the best dough, and I love using it in so many different recipes. It's just so fantastic. I thank my grandmother and my mom for this dough over and over because it's super easy to work with, and it's just very forgiving, super easy to put together, and so flaky and delicious. So I made a dough ball. I'm going to cover it either with a dough cover, a clean kitchen towel, or if not, some plastic wrap. That's totally fine. We're going to let it sit. I want this to rest for 20 minutes. So I'm going to set a 20-minute timer to allow my dough to rest. And then after 20 minutes, that's when we're going to start to form our borrecas. So before we do so, I'm going to pull out a large cookie sheet, and I'm going to line it with some parchment paper. And then, of course, I'm going to bring over that beautiful dough that's now rested. I'm going to uncover it, and I'm going to start to separate this dough into portions. Now, what do I mean? What I want to make are 18 pieces of dough out of this ball. So what I like to do is put it straight on my counter. And if your counter doesn't work, you could always put some wax paper down if you prefer, if you don't have a counter you like to work on. And then I just kind of form it into a bit of a log, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this into portions, and it's just easier to visualize my portions when I make it in the shape of a log. And then I take that log and I'm going to cut that log into 3 equal portions, as equal as you can. So I'm going to do 1 and 2 cuts, which makes 3 portions, of course. And then from each of these portions, I am going to cut 6 pieces, because this recipe, this single recipe of dough will make 18 borrecas. So I grab one of these pieces, and once again, I'm kind of shaping it into a bit of a square, into a cube. It's just easier to cut that way. And then I'm going to cut it in two. And then from each of these two pieces, I'm going to get 3 pieces. So what I do is I turn it on its side, and then I do one cut, and then I'm going to do another cut. And then you'll see that from this one piece of dough, from a third of the log, I created 6 pieces. So this is what I want. I want 6 balls of dough from each third of this log of dough. So here's one, and that's it. I just take each piece, I just gently roll it in the palm of my hand, very gently. You don't want to overwork the dough. Make a little ball, and then just add it to your bowl. So you're going to repeat the process. I'm going to show you here how we make 6 balls. That's 3, that's 4, that's 5, and finally that's 6. So you get the idea. What I did was I took a third of my log, and from that third I made 6 balls. And then of course, what am I going to do? I'm going to repeat the process again. I'm going to do the same thing with this second piece of dough, and then I'm going to repeat the same process with that third piece of dough, each time cutting my dough in half. And then from each half, I'm going to make 3 portions, 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to do the same with that other piece, 1, 2, and 3. And you see, I formed 6 pieces of dough so that I make another 6 balls. So now I'm going to have 12 balls. And then you guessed it, once I've created these 6 balls, then I'm going to do the same thing with the third piece of dough. I'm going to create 6 more balls out of that third piece, making a total of 18 balls. Now, why do I do this? It just helps me keep the size of my eggplant and cheese borrecas more uniform, because that way I know that the dough balls that I'm using are all pretty much the same size. They don't have to be perfectly exact, but it definitely helps keep the size of my borrecas more uniform. And then I know that I'm using exactly the amount that I need to make a yummy, flaky borreca without having to think as I'm shaping them. I already have my 18 pieces. It's just easier to grab one by one and then fill them and shape them from there. So now I have all 18 bowls ready. I've put them in the bowl, and now I'm going to preheat my oven to 350 degrees because now we are getting ready to shape. So I brought over the bowl of eggplant and cheese filling, 2 teaspoons to help me with my filling. And you can use a handheld roller or the hard part of your palm or a rolling pin. The truth is, I like to use my hand best. I keep the roller nearby because sometimes if the dough is fighting me a little bit, then I'll use the roller. But the truth is, if you've let your dough rest, you're not even going to need it. You can just use your fingertips, the hard part of your palm, and then you're just going to flatten out a dough ball and create a circle. And then you're going to use your teaspoons to add some of that yummy filling right into the center of that dough ball. And then once you have a nice portion of filling in the center, you don't want to overfill, but you definitely want to have a nice amount of filling. Then you're just going to grab your dough and you're going to just fold it over that filling, and then you're going to press down because you do want to make sure that both sides of that dough become one. You definitely want to make sure that they meet well so that they don't open up when you are baking them. Then you can just grab this beautiful little borreca, and then you can braid the edge once you're comfortable that you've brought together both pieces of dough. Now, if you bring the dough together and you think it looks kind of sloppy, then you can use a knife and cut off some of the excess. Actually, I'm going to cover these to keep these nice and fresh and keep them from drying out as I make my borrecas. So Now, I'm going to show you what I mean. If I don't like the semicircle, it's not looking super beautiful, then I just grab a little knife and then I just cut off the edge and just give it a nicer edge. And of course, if you don't feel comfortable braiding, you can always press the edges down with the back of a fork and you're good to go. But what I like to do is the pinchy fold, or the pinch and fold. And what I do is I just kind of pinch a touch of the dough and then I fold over, and it just creates a really pretty fluted edge on my borreca. And just do it from one end all the way to the other. And then I just kind of press it down just a bit. And then that's it. My borreca is ready to be placed on my tray that's been lined with parchment paper. And I'm ready to make the next one. So I'm going to make a couple just to show you again how the process works. And you see, you can use your handheld roller or you can just use your hand. And of course, you can put wax paper down if you don't have a counter. As I said earlier, that you're comfortable working directly on, you can work on some wax paper so that the dough doesn't stick. And then you just fill, fold over, and then you're just going to flute the edge by just braiding it all the way from one end to the other. And then I just press that down just a touch, and then I put it right on my tray. And then of course, I'm just going to repeat that process over and over until I make my 18 borrecas. And as I said, there's plenty of filling here if you want to double up on your dough recipe and make 36 borrecas instead. You could totally do that because you're definitely going to have enough filling to make 36 instead. So you can do that, or you can bake off that yummy filling, that yummy eggplant and cheese, delicious filling. So you'll end up with 18 gorgeous borrecas, and you'll end up with a side of Almodrote, which is what we call in Ladino, the language of my grandparents. That's what we call this delicious baked eggplant and cheese casserole. It's going to be super yummy. So nothing here goes to waste. I just put it in an oven safe dish, and then I just kind of spread it out a bit, and then it is ready to go. So what am I going to do now? I'm going to beat an egg for an egg wash for my beautiful eggplant and cheese borrecas. And I'm just going to crack an egg and I'm just going to beat it well, add nothing to it. And then I'm just going to use a pastry brush and I'm going to brush all of my borrecas with a little bit of this beaten egg. And then I'm going to grab that little bit of Parmesan cheese that's left in my bottle, and I'm going to give them each just a little bit of shake to finish them off with cheese. I always like to finish off the borrecas that have cheese on the inside with a little sprinkle of cheese on top so that people know what to expect when they bite into them. So definitely go with a little bit of cheese on top. And then finally, I grab one of my long, thin knives, and I like to give my borrecas a little prick with a knife. I actually prick each one of them twice because that way, while it's baking, they can release some steam and you have no risk of any of these popping open. They're going to be beautiful, gorgeous, flaky, and of course, delicious. I cannot wait. So now, all 18 are ready. They've been sprinkled. So for good measure, I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle just a touch of that grated cheese right on top of that filling to create a beautiful almodrote. And now these are going to go right into the oven on a center rack, and I'm going to stick that almodrote in there underneath. And then I'm going to set a 30-minute timer to allow my borrecas to bake. And they are looking gorgeous. These really get so yummy and so flaky. So after the 30 minutes, you're going to pull them out and your entire house is going to smell divine. It smells so amazing in here. They're golden and flaky and just super yummy with that eggplant and cheese filling. They're really just delightful. So now that these are looking all gorgeous and we feel like biting into them, we're going to let them sit just for a couple of minutes right on the tray. And then after a couple of minutes of admiring them, when they are safe to handle, I will be putting them onto a cooling rack. But just look at how gorgeous these guys look. They're golden and flaky, and they stayed together so well. They didn't pop open. They're just perfect. And look at that gorgeous side of Almodrote, which is why I told you I never make less than 2 eggplants when making these borrecas, because then I can choose. I can either double up on my dough recipe and make 36, or I have a gorgeous Almodrote and 18 delicious eggplant and cheese borrecas to go along with it. Either way, you can't go wrong because they're both so yummy. And lucky me, I get to have them both. So now they've sat for a couple of minutes. I'm going to transfer them over onto a cooling rack. I'm going to allow them to cool for a bit until they are edible, because I don't want to bite into them when they're super hot, but I cannot wait to try them and to try this yummy, cheesy, golden, delicious almodrote that I have on the side. They both look so amazing. My mouth is watering. So now they've cooled enough that I've been able to transfer them onto a serving platter. And look at how pretty that looks. Tell me that anyone you serve these to is not going to be ridiculously impressed. They really come together quite easily. The dough is really simple to make. Do not be intimidated by it because it is very, very easy to make. And you saw how easily we made that yummy, delicious eggplant and cheese filling also. These are perfect and they're yummy and they come from the heart and they are cooked with love, and everyone will be able to know that the minute they take that first bite. Flaky, perfect, delicious, and of course that golden almodrote. I can't wait. Okay, so enough with the admiring. It's now time to taste these guys. I'm going to grab this one right here. My mouth is literally watering. It looks so good. And look how beautiful and golden the pastry is. The dough comes out perfect. The texture is just divine. So good. If you love Sephardic-Turkish Borrecas, you're going to love this version filled with eggplant and cheese. They're so yummy. They're beautiful, flaky. Look at how that crust just flakes off. So tasty, so delicious. I needed another bite because I just can't get enough. So good. They just came out absolutely perfect. And they are a classic with a little twist. Yum, yum, yum. The eggplant fans are going to go wild. And guess what? Even people who think they're not eggplant fans will love these borrecas. It's been proven time and time again. People who think they don't like eggplant taste these. And they are in awe. They cannot believe that they are eating eggplant when they don't even think they like eggplant. That's how good these are. They're yummy. They're perfect. They're cheesy. They are super delicious. And then, of course, we have those gorgeous borrecas. But guess what? I have a side of almodrote that I made with that leftover filling, which I purposely make enough to have leftover because I just love this stuff so much. Look at that. Look at how golden and delicious and crusty and yummy that has become in the oven. It's just so perfect and it's so tasty. Yum, yum, yum. Look at that golden crust all over. Super, super tasty. Spectacular. If you choose to bake it off this way, you're gonna love, love, love this filling. It is a yummy almodrote, and it's like having 2 dishes in one. Two yummy, perfect, delicious, cheesy eggplant, yummy, yummy dishes in one. Super good. I know you're gonna love these. So how crazy good do these eggplant and cheese borrecas look? Eggplant and cheese hand pies. How can you go wrong? They're tasty, they're perfect, they're great for a lunch with some salad or just to invite some friends over, because you just grab them and nibble away and they're super, super yummy and everyone is gonna love them. And as you saw, the dough comes together super easy. Do not be intimidated. They're very easy to make. And then of course, we prepare that yummy eggplant and cheese and fill them up, and they're just super, super tasty. And as you saw, you can leave some extra on the side and just bake it and have a little eggplant and cheese casserole too. So you're getting a bonus little dish in the process. They're yummy and I know you're gonna love them. Trust me. No, better yet, don't trust me. You're gonna have to try to make this recipe yourself. And of course, if you've enjoyed today's recipe, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Thank you so much for sharing my recipes and for liking them and for writing a little comment. I love when you do that. And if you haven't done so already, please remember to subscribe to my channel and to touch that little notification bell so that you get notified every time I put up an amazing new recipe, which I do all of the time. And if you're not already following me on social media, please be sure to follow Sally That Girl in the Kitchen on Facebook, Instagram, and on Pinterest. And you can find me as Sally That Girl FL on Twitter, Snapchat, and on TikTok. See you next time. Sally That Girl in the Kitchen.